The Homosexuals, with CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace.
Homosexuality is an enigma. Even in this era of bold sexual mores, it remains a subject that people find disturbing, embarrassing, and the reluctance to discuss it. Yet there is a growing concern about homosexuals in society, about their increasing visibility. In preparing this broadcast, CBS News commissioned a survey by the Opinion Research Corporation into public attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution. We shall present other results of the survey later in the broadcast, and we shall investigate some of the medical, legal, and social aspects of homosexuality. But first, we shall examine it as a human condition.
Now, I know myself, from my own standpoint, and speaking of other people that I know, that the innermost aspects of a person's personality is his sexual orientation. And I can't imagine myself giving this up. And I don't think most other people who are sure of their sexuality, whether they're homosexuals or heterosexuals, could imagine giving that up either.
Warren Adkins is 28. He graduated from high school in Washington, D.C., went to night school for 3 years, then spent a year drifting around the country. He's back in Washington now, working as a school registrar. For the last 5 years, he's been an active member of the Mattachine Society, a homosexual organization. What do you think caused your sexual orientation? Have you thought about it?
I have thought about it, but it really doesn't concern me very much. I never would imagine if I had blonde hair that I would worry about what genes and what chromosomes caused my blonde hair. Or if I had brown eyes. My homosexuality to me is very much in the same category. I feel no more guilt about my homosexuality or about my sexual orientation than a person with blonde hair or with dark skin or with light skin would feel about what they had.
Did your parents know?
Yes, I told my parents myself when I was 14 years old. I feel in many ways that I've been very lucky to have such a warm and understanding family. They know about my homosexuality. They have accepted me as a person, and this I feel is very important. They don't think of me as some kind of creature. I had one friend who was beaten savagely by his father, and he beat him, in fact, with bricks. I was one of the lucky ones. My family reacted, I think, very heroically and humanely.
Most homosexuals, if they had a chance to be heterosexual, would they?
Well, I have a friend who took a poll of 300 people on that very question. He asked them, if you were able to take a pill to change yourself from a homosexual to a heterosexual, would you do it? And something like 95% of them answered no.
But in that same poll, if I'm not mistaken, the majority said that they would not want, if they had one, a son or a brother to be a homosexual.
That's true. I think some people might not want to wish on others a situation in which society would cause problems for their younger people. And I think that this is probably true of questions where other minorities are involved in the same way. I think that many people, for example, wouldn't want to bring a racially mixed child into a world that scorned him. And I can understand this feeling among many people.
This man is 27, college educated. He was unable to hold a job because of his inability to contain his homosexual inclinations. He's been in jail 3 times for committing homosexual acts. If he is arrested once more, he faces the possibility of life prison. He is now on probation and in psychotherapy.
I had a very domineering mother, tyrant. That's a very sweet tyrant, but a tyrant nonetheless. It was a love that I had that was kind of killing. And I was a fat child, was made fun of by the other children. Mother was going to have her way about how I dressed, how I acted, what I did, what I didn't do. A fairly curious child, but I had to restrain it. And I was afraid of her. I was scared to death of her.
When did you first go into therapy?
As soon as my parents found out they couldn't understand what they had done to bring about such a turn of events. They were helpful. They saw to it that psychotherapy was made available. Every opportunity to change this was set down for me, but I wasn't receptive to it, and that's unfortunate too, because I think if I would have felt uncomfortable in any way, I would have gone ahead and done something about it much before now. I felt superior. I felt as though I had license to satisfy every need, every desire, every tension.
And this was just purely sexual adventure, sexual gratification.
Yes. Animal sexual gratification, yes. We don't know what form it might have taken other than this. I use the word sick. I'm not taking a pot shot. I'm not attempting to judge homosexuals. I'm not a judge. I know that inside now I'm sick. I'm not sick just sexually. I'm sick in a lot of ways. Immature, childlike. And the sex part of it is a symptom, like a stomach ache is a symptom of who knows what.
Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. The CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred. A vast majority believe that homosexuality is an illness. Only 10% say it is a crime. And yet, and here's the paradox, the majority of Americans favor legal punishment, even for homosexual acts performed in private between consenting adults. The homosexual, bitterly aware of his rejection, responds by going underground. They frequent their own clubs and bars and coffee houses where they can act out in the fashion that they want to, where they can escape the disapproving eye of the society that they call straight. No one knows exactly how many homosexuals there are in the United States. There's no reliable way to find out, for most of them are unwilling to acknowledge it. The Kinsey report of 1948 dealt only with white males. It estimated that 1 in 25 is exclusively homosexual throughout his adult life. Other estimates range as high as 1 in 6. The truth lies somewhere in between. And some men venture into homosexual experimentation for a year or two, then revert to heterosexuality. Some are bisexual. They marry, have children, and keep their homosexual contacts on the side. This much is certain. Male homosexuals in America number in the millions, and their number is growing. They are attracted mostly to the anonymity that a big city gives them. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. The permissiveness and the variety of the city draw them. The average homosexual, if there be such, is promiscuous. He is not interested in nor capable of a lasting relationship like that of a heterosexual marriage. His sex life, his love life, consists of a series of chance encounters at the clubs and bars he inhabits, and even on the streets of the city. The one-night stand, these are characteristic of the homosexual relationship. And the homosexual prostitute has become a fixture in the downtown streets at night, on street corners, at subway exits. These young men signal their availability for pay. But there are tens of thousands of homosexuals who deplore the tawdry image of the so-called gay life. Architects and lawyers, doctors, teachers, businessmen, men like these, who lead quiet, unexceptionable lives in towns and cities all across the country, much like their heterosexual neighbors. There is just one thing they are said to share with their homosexual brothers.
Homosexuality is, in fact, a mental illness which has reached epidemiological proportions. In 1948, Kinsey said that approximately 28% of adult males have had, at one time or another, 1 or more homosexual contacts.
Dr. Charles Socarides is a New York psychoanalyst, a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at the Albert Einstein School of Medicine, here lecturing to a group of resident psychiatrists on homosexuality. They are taught that no man is born homosexual. that it is not genetic in origin, not the result of a hormone imbalance. Rather, they are told that sexual behavior is learned behavior. And many psychiatrists now believe that homosexuality begins to form in the first 3 years of life, the result of early childhood experience.
I was wondering if you think that there are any, quotes, happy homosexuals for whom homosexuality would be, in a way, their best adjustment to life.
The fact that somebody is homosexual, a true obligatory homosexual, automatically rules out the possibility that he will remain happy for long, in my opinion. The stresses and strains the psychic apparatus is subjected to over the years will cause him, in time, I think, to have increasing difficulties. I think the whole idea of saying the happy homosexual is to, again, to create a mythology about the nature of homosexuality.
What is it that drives a man into a homosexual relationship?
The aim of the homosexual act, paradoxically enough, is to seek masculinity. And that, in essence, the homosexual, in having homosexual contacts, is really achieving masculinity through identification with his partner. One thinks ordinarily that he is becoming feminine, but in fact, he is attempting to achieve the very thing that he felt he was so lacking in childhood.
What about the problem of latent homosexuality?
Simply because a person has a homosexual wish does not make him a homosexual, or has a homosexual impulse, or wonders what it would be like to have homosexual relations. And it's what we do that counts. The implication, you see, that is commonly tossed about, that all of us contain a so-called latent homosexual component, is completely untrue.
I wonder if you think that there's any time in life when a non-homosexual person is particularly vulnerable to seduction by a homosexual.
First of all, one cannot be seduced into becoming a homosexual. One develops homosexuality as a result of early childhood fears that we have mentioned before. Certainly, there are individuals, however, with a weakened sexual organization who are barely functioning heterosexually and who may have strong desires for a homosexual partner. And it is those individuals who, when they're seduced, can become homosexual.
It should be pointed out that Dr. Socarides' views are not universally held. There is a smaller group who do not consider homosexuality an illness at all. Instead, they regard it as a deviation within the range of normalcy. But the thrust of diagnosis and treatment in recent years has been mainly along the lines that Socarides details. And although the prognosis for cure is uncertain, some studies indicate that as many as 1/3 of those who seek help eventually become heterosexual. 4 years ago, the results of a 9-year research project of the Society of Medical Psychoanalysts were published. Chairman of the study, Dr. Irving Bieber, professor of clinical psychiatry at New York Medical College. Dr. Bieber speaks about the roots of homosexuality.
The fundamental framework is forged within the family setting between the parent-child relationship. A typical mother, that falls in this group, is a mother who establishes an over-close relationship with this son. She is generally overprotective, over-fearful of his getting into injury, tends to play her part in isolating him from the peer group in the sense of these boys are not gentlemanly enough, they're not refined enough, they're roughnecks, and she tends to discourage subtly his participation in rough and tumble activity. She's over-close, over-intimate. She frequently prefers this son to her other children. She often prefers this son to her husband, explicitly and openly.
Now, what is the role of the father during this time?
The father, in typical instances, is detached from this son. Not from all his sons, but from this son. spends little time with him. He not infrequently minimizes the son, is contemptuous of him, humiliates him, is competitive with him, and resents the position put in by the mother, creating this coupling between the mother and this son.
Well, say that the son has a close binding, dominating mother. What can the father do to keep his son from developing a homosexual orientation?
The father can do a great deal, and he can be the determining figure, even in the presence of this type of mother. If, first of all, he recognizes this is his son as much as it is his wife's son. He has a warm, affectionate, supportive relationship with this son. If he spends time with him, if he interferes with some of the activity that this mother is carrying out, I do not believe that it is possible to produce homosexual if the father is a warm, good, supportive, constructive father to his son.
Most homosexuals do not consider themselves ill, and they are able to live with their condition fairly comfortably. On the other hand, there are those whose compulsive behavior becomes a problem for the police. This is an example. This 19-year-old serviceman left his girlfriend on the beach to go to a men's room in a park nearby where he knew that he could find a homosexual contact. The men's room was under police surveillance. The only faces you will see are those of the arresting officers.
Is anybody going to hear about this, like my parents? Your parents won't know of this, but your company commander will probably find out about it. A routine channel. Oh, God. I mean, I can get kicked out for that. You could, yes. But I couldn't take a record like that. Don't you realize that you guys are in a public park? Yeah, I realize. Anyone can walk into that men's room. Any child can walk in there and see what you guys were doing. Well, how do you think that would affect them mentally for the rest of their lives? They so enact like that. I realize that. But the thing is that for life, I'll be wrecked by this record. See, I'm only 19, and this will ruin me. I couldn't take for anybody to know about this. What it do to my family and everything. You just told us that your girlfriend was down the beach. She is. She's right down there now. She's down the beach this minute. Yes. And yet you're making a homosexual contact. I was down here. What's your explanation for that? It's not something I really need. It's just sort of, I don't know, curiosity sort of. I'm perfectly happy with her. I love her. Well, why didn't you think of this before you did it? It's something that it just happened. I don't know. I can't explain it. But I'm just 19. I mean, I don't know. I just know this is going to ruin his life.
For the police view of homosexuality, we talked to Inspector James Fisk of the Los Angeles Police Department.
During the year of 1964, we arrested 3,000 homosexuals who committed their lewd acts in public places. I can state conclusively that the problem is growing. I'm concerned with the moral atmosphere in the community. And I'm opposed, as a matter of principle, to making anything which is improper or immoral conspicuous. And by this conspicuousness, making it easy for persons to engage in this kind of activity. The law itself is such that really there isn't a great deal we can do about those things which occur in private places. But the most important thing to emphasize here, I believe, this applies also to other kinds of vice activity, that our primary effort goes to the reduction of prohibited behavior in public places.
By and large, homosexuals themselves agree with that view. There are numerous homosexual organizations across the country with a variety of names. Their membership is comparatively small, but their influence in the homosexual community is considerable. The head of the Mattachine Society in San Francisco is Hal Call.
In our view,
the enforcement of laws which forbid public sexual behavior or overt demonstrations of affection and so on that lead to a sexual stimulus in public view, laws against that are appropriate and should be maintained. Laws which protect the young from their elders so that the young can have the opportunity to develop sexually along their own lines and within their own framework rather than to have ideas induced upon them by others. These laws we hold are good. Laws which involve the use, or which forbid the use of force or violence or any kind of harm or taking an unfair advantage in sexual matters, these are also good and will have to be maintained. However, we do feel in the Mattachine, and this is our strongest strongest part of our program, that the laws which forbid certain types of private consenting sexual behavior among adults need to be changed, so that what adults do willingly in private is their own affair.
Homosexual acts are not considered a crime in most countries in Western Europe, and the British are currently revising their laws to legalize homosexual behavior between consenting adults in private. In the United States, Illinois is the only state where such acts are legal. But nationally, as we said earlier, the CBS News Public Opinion Survey indicates that sentiment is against permitting homosexual relationships between consenting adults without legal punishment. The severity of the punishment varies from state to state. Judge James Braxton Craven of the Federal District Court in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Most doctors who have studied homosexuality agree that prison environment, including close, continuous, and exclusive contact with other men, aggravates and strengthens homosexual tendencies and provides unexcelled opportunity for homosexual practices. Is there any public purpose served by a possible 60-year maximum or even 5-year minimum imprisonment of the occasional or one-time homosexual without treatment? And if so, what is it? Are homosexuals twice as dangerous to society as second-degree murderers? Is there any good reason why a person convicted of a single homosexual act with another adult may be imprisoned 6 times as long as an abortionist, twice as long as an armed bank robber, and 730 times as long as the public drunk?
Beyond the question of legal reform, there is the moral issue which troubles many clergymen. The Bible condemns homosexuality. Through the centuries, churchmen have called it unnatural, unmanly, ungodly. And yet there is a tendency today among some of the clergy to take a less rigid position. For an indication of this change in religious attitudes, we talked first to Father William Beer, chairman of the psychology department at Fordham University.
The Catholic Church is quite clear in saying that the expression of homosexuality is sinful. It is a sin. But on the other hand, the Church is equally clear in saying that the tendency toward homosexuality is in itself blameless. So that the Church has a great deal of sympathy for those who are handicapped in this way, in having these kinds of tendencies, but it is only the expression of these tendencies that is sinful. So that the Church does not blame, it does not deprecate, it doesn't feel it is at all shameful for an individual to have homosexual tendencies. For these were not deliberately fostered. These are not blameworthy. So that although this has always been recognized as a problem, there is a great deal more willingness now, I think, to talk about this a great deal more frankly and to face this as a pastoral problem.
As an individual, I have to confess, and this is a humble confession, that I have this problem in my own emotions whenever a homosexual comes to me. I have the reaction of tending to pull away and to not want to come into physical contact. There's something here that just is wrong and perhaps even a little dirty. I'd like to believe that I have had some success in controlling this because I know it's wrong. It's wrong from the standpoint of being a Christian. And I confess we face a grave problem when we go before the general membership of the church and we say, here's a homosexual, is he acceptable? By that I simply mean, can you accept him with compassion and love and attempt to help him? And all too often, of course, the reaction is going to be one of revulsion. This I admit and recognize, and we have a constant battle with ourselves. This is sin on the part of the church. Our reaction in any situation ought to be one of compassion and concern, first of all, above everything else.
Most people think that homosexuality is confined to major cities. It is not. In 1955, there were reports of a homosexual underworld in Boise, Idaho. Population at the time, 34,000. The people of Boise tried to stamp out homosexuality. They discovered it couldn't be done. In the learning process, everybody suffered. It began with this headline in the Idaho Daily Statesman. The next day, the paper ran an editorial entitled, "Crush the Monster, Crush Homosexuality." The year-long investigation that followed shook Boise to its foundations. Everyone was suspect. Men were afraid to be seen together. Weekly poker games among men who had known each other for years were canceled. There were reports that many high school boys were involved. A prominent banker, a leading attorney were arrested, along with clerks, repairmen, salesmen. Altogether, hundreds were interrogated in this house on a quiet residential street. When it was over 15 months later, one homosexual was in a state penitentiary with a life sentence. 2 received 15-year terms, 1 10 years, 2 7 years, and scores of lives were ruined. Wayne Kidwell was 15 years old, a junior at Boise High School when all this took place. Now he is county prosecuting attorney. He represents a new generation with different ideas.
There's homosexual activity in Boise and probably every city in the United States. There's homosexual activity and certainly some prosecution. When you talk about prosecuting homosexuality, of course, you have to break this down into categories so that you know what you're talking about. The prosecution of a homosexual that's involved with a young child, I think, is something that should exist. When you're talking about prosecution between consenting adults, I think that we have to take another look at it.
Well, when you say another look, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think that the laws right now, as they're written, are designed towards sex itself. And I think that this is somewhat undesirable to make sex per se illegal or to put connotations on it that would be undesirable. I think it would be better if the laws were written to prohibit the coercion, the unwillingness on the part of one of the parties involved, this part of it, actually the force that is involved. I feel that the laws should focus on this rather than the sex itself. As for myself, I think it's a healthy thing if we can talk about something like this.
Why?
I think it can be beneficial not only to Boise, but to anybody else that's concerned about this, that we know as much about it as possible, and that we put it in the proper perspective, and not make it something that we talk about in back rooms, or that young people have to be afraid when they mention the word homosexual.
Homosexual groups around the country feel the same way, and they're willing to stand up and be counted on the issue. Nonetheless, even though we live in an age of protest and demonstrations, this picket line in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia on July 4th was met with a degree of disbelief. It was a combined demonstration by various homosexual organizations intent upon raising a cry for their own civil rights. Their chief complaint? That their members are discriminated against, especially by the government. The State Department is very sensitive to the issue of homosexuality. The Mattachine Society picketed the State Department and got this reaction from Dean Rusk.
Well, I understand that we're being picketed by a group of homosexuals. The policy of the department is that we do not employ homosexuals knowingly, and that if we discover homosexuals in our department, we discharge them. It's a department that is concerned with the security of the United States, and that we have to exact standards of conduct which are far higher than the conduct of the general society in which we operate. This has to do with problems of blackmail and problems of personal instability and all sorts of things.
Every American citizen has the right to be considered by his government
on the basis of his own personal merits as an individual. Certainly some homosexuals are poor risks. This is no possible excuse for penalizing all homosexuals.
Eventually, like other civil rights groups, the picketers took up posts outside the White House, which drew a not unexpected reaction from a sightseer from West Virginia.
Well, I'm a country boy, I guess, because I couldn't believe this. I mean, I didn't know this was a problem over here, or at least I didn't think anybody'd have a sign out about it. But I just don't understand. It's kind of weird. I mean, you people are getting much more cosmopolitan than I thought you were over here, because this is really something. Let's face it, homosexuality is a problem, and these people are really advocating that we don't solve the problem. They're advocating that we tolerate the problem. And I think these people are a fit subject for a mental health program. These people need help.
Think they ought to?
I'm sorry. As I say again, I'm qualifying all this that I'm a poor country boy from West Virginia, and this is amazing to me.
Homosexuals are discriminated against in almost all fields of employment in all parts of the country. But in the world of the creative arts, they receive equal treatment. Indeed, some will say better treatment. There is even talk of a homosexual mafia in the arts dominating various fields: theater, music, dance, fashion. In painting, there is the commonly expressed notion that the homosexual's influence has been corrupting. That pop art, for example, is a trivial vulgarization that goes hand in hand with camp, half hoax, half hostile, a means by which the homosexual, forced to live between two worlds, strikes back at an antagonistic society. In the fashion industry, many observers see an effort to blend the sexes, to defeminize woman, to replace curve and contour with sexless geometric sterility. We talked about all this with social critic Albert Goldman, professor at Columbia University, who sees the homosexual distorting our cultural values, and with author-playwright Gore Vidal, who thinks otherwise.
And I don't think that there is any greater incident of homosexual novelists, homosexual painters, homosexual musicians than there ever were. I wouldn't begin to be able to generalize and say, well, there is such a thing as a homosexual in the arts. What does it mean? It is as natural to be a homosexual as it is to be heterosexual. And the difference between a homosexual and a heterosexual is about the difference between somebody who has brown eyes and somebody who has blue eyes.
Who says so?
I say so. It is a completely natural act from the beginning of time.
Seems to me that there are a lot of features of ordinary life which are enormously exaggerated in homosexual life. I mean, the kind of jealousy and rage and promiscuity that is just inherent in the homosexual life, where you cannot have marriage, really, and where you cannot have children, and where you don't have all the stabilizing influences, enables this writer, simply by writing out of his own truth, his own experience, to enormously distort and intensify features that we recognize are inherent in our lives, too.
There's a theory which one reads all the time about how a certain successful playwright in a very successful play describes married people as heterosexuals as being wicked and vicious and clawing at each other. And this is supposed to be really a story about two homosexual couples. Well, homosexuals are there are wicked homosexuals and there are wicked heterosexuals, and this is a playwright who deals in savage and extreme situations. And I don't see any of it as being translatable, particularly as a heterosexual, as a homosexual situation posing as heterosexual. And furthermore, if it were, then why is it popular? Obviously, it's popular because what he has to say about married couples speaks to everybody. As a matter of fact, there's a certain homosexual playwright who has written the only really good women characters in American theater written by him. So that the homosexual is some way this person trying to absolutely destroy the family structure of the United States. Nonsense.
Inevitably, these men are going to project an image onto women which is based on their own fantasies, their own imaginings. And since their view of women is charged with hostile feelings, since intuitively they want to carve woman into a shape that's somewhere between man and woman, a sort of boy-woman, let's say, all of this is going to come through in their work.
Now, it is notorious that the whole fashion industry, for example, is dominated by homosexuals. They are projecting onto women their fantasies of the female. These fantasies are obviously infused with a great deal of hostility and with an instinctive desire to convert the female into a form which is essentially a sort of neuter form, a form that is in between, a hybrid.
There are those who suggest that there's a kind of a homosexual mafia in which the homosexual in the arts, in a mutually protective way, helps his fellows.
Well, it's like most legends, I suppose. There may be some basis for it. I don't know how it would begin because, the artist is an artist first, and he's a homosexual or a heterosexual second. But I have never seen any sign in any of the arts of there being a hum and turn, as alarmed editorialists like to write.
You can get the effects of conspiracy without having a conspiracy if you just have all the people essentially in the same family, if it's a Cosa Nostra arrangement, our thing, our family. If you have a group like the homosexuals who are extremely clannish and who have a tradition of taking care of each other, who constitute a sort of welfare state for each other, then you often get, without anybody intending any conspiracy, the same effect.
We have a sexual ethic which is the joke of the world. We are laughed at in every country of the world for our attitudes towards sex. The United States is living out some mad Protestant 19th century dream of human behavior. Instead of saying, aren't we wicked because we have a high divorce rate, or aren't we wicked because men like to go to bed with men and women like to go to bed with women, why not begin by saying that our basic values are all wrong? The idea of marriage is obsolete in our society. Everybody knows it. There are natural monogamists. There are people who indeed enjoy one another's company. But can you imagine a man and a woman who are told that for 60 years they're going to have to live together and have sex only with one another? This is nonsense. Why not begin by accepting the fact what human beings really are, men and women, which is we are open. We have something that André Gide referred to as floating sensuality. We can be aroused by this, by that, not necessarily by men, not necessarily by women. So let us begin with the reality of human relations and not start talking about moral fiber, because we're not living out this mad 19th century dream of that everybody, we must go in Noah's Ark in twos, one male, one female, and for 60 years in one another's company. This is what's at fault. This is breaking down, and I think that the so-called the breaking of the moral fiber of the country these commentators speak of is one of the healthiest things that's begun to happen.
It seems to me today we're in the course of gradually rolling back from our former cultural values or cultural identifications to a more narcissistic, to a more self-indulgent, to a more self-centered and essentially adolescent lifestyle. The homosexual thing cannot really be separated from a lot of other parallel phenomena in our society today. I mean, we see this on every hand. 40% of modern marriages end in divorce. We have a very widespread tendency to live lives of nonstop promiscuity. This is played up in a kind of playboy philosophy, which is celebrated and sugar-coated and offered to the masses and received with pleasure. We have all sorts of fun and games approaches to sex. We have rampant exhibitionism today in every conceivable form. We have a sort of masochistic, sadistic vogue. We have a smut industry that grinds out millions of dollars worth of pornography a year. We have a sort of masturbatory dance style that's embraced as if it were something profoundly sexual, whereas actually all those dancers do is just grind away without any consciousness of other people or their partners. And homosexuality is just one of a number of such things, all tending towards the subversion, towards the final erosion of our traditional cultural values. After all, when you're corrupt, why, you fall into the hands of receivers.
We end as we began, with a homosexual. Because at the root of all the legal, medical, and moral questions for which society has not yet found the answers, there lies the human condition. But this man is different from any we have seen till now, for he, along with tens of thousands of his brothers, is married. He's 31 years old, a professor of psychology, the father of 2 children.
Why did you get married in the first place?
I think it was this being frightened into heterosexuality. I was terribly frightened by the homosexual feelings, the guilt associated with having feelings of attraction towards other males. And this pushed me, I think, to making heterosexual contacts or establishing heterosexual contacts and eventually getting married.
Does your wife know now that you are a homosexual?
My wife knows now that I am a homosexual.
What's her reaction?
Her reaction, my wife is rather sophisticated psychologically. It wasn't one of a reaction of a complete shock. However, I think she finds it difficult to accept the idea, as I think a woman might, that I could be interested in another person sexually, be it male or female.
Have you developed a warm and genuine love relationship with a man, or are these more or less sallies into promiscuity?
To be honest with you, Mr. Wallace, I think I'd have to say they're more or less sallies into promiscuity. I personally don't believe in a love relationship with another man. I think this is part of the gay folklore, something they try to obtain, they'll never obtain it, primarily because I think the gay crowd is so narcissistic that they can't establish a love relationship with another male.
So it's a fulfillment of a sex urge.
Yeah, that's it essentially. If I have a homosexual liaison or a homosexual contact, I don't identify myself, my position, who I'm associated with this sort of thing, because of the dangers that are involved in identifying myself.
What about your wife? Do you think that she can live with it? That she will live with it?
Honestly, no. I don't think so. I don't think she can live with this. And I can't continue to keep this thing undercover. It's too hard on me, and then I begin to take it out on the family. I think instead of 4 people being miserable, I think it's probably better that the marriage probably end in that case. I'll still love my wife. I do love my wife as much as I'm capable of loving another person.
The dilemma of the homosexual. Told by the medical profession he is sick. By the law that he's a criminal. Shunned by employers, rejected by heterosexual society. Incapable of a fulfilling relationship with a woman, or, for that matter, with a man. At the center of his life, he remains anonymous, a displaced person, an outsider.
CBS reports The Homosexuals was filmed and edited under the supervision and control of CBS News.